This video is about what I call self-psychology or mental health empowerment. So there's the idea of like, how do you maybe take a bit more control over your quality of life? Or if you're dealing with maybe somewhat of a mental health thing, like a little depressed, a little bit anxiety, like how do you actually get yourself better? And the reason for this is it's like the old analogy. Do you give a man a fish or do you teach a man to fish? And I've just seen it so many damn times now in our like medical system, in our culture. Like we don't actually teach people how to take care of themselves. Okay, so that's what this video is about, and it was inspired by a quick story I'll tell you about that really kind of pissed me off and frustrated me. This friend of mine, who I kind of mentor him a little bit, he has this weird kind of disease that he has really horrible foot pain. It's like debilitating. Like every single day he can hardly walk, and he's only 21 years old, so it's pretty unfair that this happened to him. So this horrible foot pain. And what his, like, obviously he needed to see doctors and psychologists to deal with this because he's been kind of depressed about it. And what they did is, like, first they put him on a bunch of different weird, like, painkillers and stuff to try to deal with that. And then they were like, oh, well, you're depressed, so we're going to try to put you on antidepressants. Like, okay, so let's just stop for a second. And this is, like, a similar pattern I've seen with other people in my life and stories where, like, someone dies and their partner, they say, oh, you have depression, you need to take antidepressants. If someone you love dies, you're going to be sad. I mean, that's called being a human. Okay, so when my friend, when you're 21 years old and you have this horrible chronic foot pain that you're in like the prime of your life and you can't even do anything, you're gonna be a little sad about it. Okay, that is not depression. That is called being a human. Right, so that's kind of the first part of this video that I'm getting at is like, you're not depressed if there's just something actually wrong with your life, right? Like I use this analogy of like if you have a piece of glass stuck in your foot, right? And so you go to your doctor and he says, oh, you have glass in your foot and it hurts? All right, well, first we're gonna put you on these different pills, and then we're gonna give you some pain meds, and then you're still in pain, we're gonna put you on antidepressants. Like, no, just take the piece of glass out of my foot. Like, take the splinter out. That's what I think so much of our like approach to mental health totally overlooks. And here's a test that this is what I told my friend, and maybe there's a little out there. I shouldn't say that. I'm not like a licensed therapist, psychologist, whatever. But here's a test I told him. If you go to see someone for this issue you're dealing with, whether it's like kind of like say a mental health thing, and they do not prescribe to you a behavioral and or pharmacological, which means like pills, intervention, then they don't have any interest in getting you better. So let me explain that a little bit. So there's two kind of treatment models in general for any, especially with mental health. There's a behavioral health intervention, which is where you direct the patient to actually change something they're doing. So an example is you come in, they say, I have depression. They say, okay, well, we're going to prescribe you exercising. Pharmacological side is more the traditional prescription you think about with, they put you on antidepressants or you're going to take this pill or whatever. And so the reason I say that if your provider only does the pharmacological side, then they have no interest in you getting better. And there's two reasons I say that. Okay, number one, and this is not just me talking, there's neuroscientists such as Andrew Huberman who say that you should always look to behavioral interventions first. Because behavioral interventions, when you're actually self-directing the change, that rewires your nervous system and your brain. It's a concept of neuroplasticity. So you're actually making lasting change instead of depending upon some external chemical. The second reason for this is that almost always a combination of behavioral and pharmacological works best. So again, if you look at like the classic examples, you think about depression, there's studies where they have people on antidepressants or they have them exercise. And usually what they find is that people who exercise have better outcomes or similar outcomes. But the people who have the best outcomes are people who do both. And so I say that if your provider doesn't treat you with both, they just lean on the pharmacological, then they have no interest in you getting better. They're interested in keeping you sick. And it's an incentive problem, okay? Because the average, this is not me ripping on therapists, psychologists. I've seen therapists before. I know psychologists, and I think 99% of them are really good people, and they really want you to get better. But it's our system, our healthcare system, our economic system, the incentive structure. Think about the two incentives. And this, again, I told my friend all this. I was kind of ranting, and now I'm ranting because I'm passionate about this. Think about the incentive structure with this. So someone comes in, they kind of have depression, or like pain and depression, let's say. You can teach them mindfulness practices to deal with pain. If you look at mindfulness-based stress reduction, there's tons of clinical research that shows that mindfulness practices can help people with chronic pain. So you teach them about mindfulness of pain, you get them on an exercise plan to help with the depression, and maybe you also teach them some cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically learning how to challenge and dispute negative thoughts and reframe your cognitive system to be more positive. Okay, so you're going to teach them how to do that, right? Maybe so they're going to pay maybe a few $1,000s to a therapist to help them with all those things and actually implement them. And then they kind of know how to manage themselves, like they're good to go. Or you don't teach them shit and you just say, hey, you're going to take this bottle of pills every month. Think about the incentive structure here. So in one of those, you have a patient who's going to spend a few $1,000s, and maybe after a few months or a year, they're good to go. In this other situation, you just have recurring revenue for the rest of their lives. So it's, I think, simply a matter of incentives, that often our healthcare system is more interested in keeping people sick than it is actually getting them better. And again, I've seen this so many times in my life, even with parents of mine, with cousins, with family members. You have to be responsible for taking your health into your own hands. Okay? So that's this idea of, do you give a person a fish or do you teach them how to fish? In this video, I want to do my best in a short time to start to teach you to fish, but more importantly, just change your mindset to thinking, I want to learn how to fish. And that's exactly what I told my friend. I said, what you have to keep in mind is that it's kind of like going to college in a way, in terms of education. You think that if I just go to college, I'm going to learn. You're not going to learn that much unless you are motivated to learn, unless you take your education into your own hands. Getting better, I really hate to say this, but it's just facts. I've seen it so many times. When it comes to mental health and the healthcare system, it's up to you. If you don't take getting better into your own hands, and again, that doesn't mean you stop seeing your therapist, stop seeing your psychologist, you just quit any medication you're on, but it simply means changing your attitude and taking a bit more ownership. You're not going to get better. So if you are kind of in this place now saying, okay, I'm with you, Jackson, so far, right? There's kind of these systemic obstacles often that get in the way, that we're not really taught how to take care of ourselves. What I want to do now is just give a brief start on how to go about taking care of yourself. So you're with me now, right? You say, I get this basic idea that if I want to get better, again, this doesn't mean you're like crazy depressed or something and you're watching this video. This could just be even like, I'm in a pretty good place. Whatever the case is, if you want to get better, you have to take this into your own hands, right? And actually learn how to get better, how to manage yourself. So the first part of this, then, you start to say, well, okay, what should I do, basically? And there are kind of a million things we could focus on in terms of specifics about mindfulness practices, exercise, diet changes, whatever. There's a general kind of skill set that comes before that, though. And it's the idea of how do you go from knowing to doing. And Yale professor Laurie Santos, who's one of the world's leading experts on well-being and happiness, she talks about the G.I. Joe fallacy. This comes from the old G.I. Joe cartoon that said, knowing is half the battle. In reality, knowing is 1% of the battle. It's not even close to half, right? Knowing isn't doing. And when it comes to mental health, a lot of times we even kind of know the things we need to do. I know I should exercise. I know I should do a little meditation. I know I should get out and just connect with people. But getting ourselves to do it, that's the hard part. So what I want to talk to you about is how do you kind of overcome what I call resistance? And it's a bit about discipline. But let me give an example of this, again, with my same friend. He said to me, yeah, Jackson, like, I just have this mindset where it's almost like I don't want to get better. Like, I just want to stay in this place of like suffering and being sorry for myself. And he even said his other friend was like, well, why don't you just give me your mindset? Imagine that as like a thought exercise. Just give me your mindset. Give me your suffering. Give me your depression, the part of you that doesn't want to get better. Just give it to me. And my friend said, I didn't want to give it up. Like, this is not just him, and if you're ever in this place, it's not just you. Again, this is a natural part of the human psychology. And probably like the best wording I've heard to describe it is what this guy, his author, I think his first name's Stephen, but his last name's Pressfield. He wrote The War of Art. The word he uses is resistance. And that's defined as this powerful, universally experienced force that keeps people from realizing their potential. A powerful, universally experienced force that keeps people from realizing their potential. So let's dive into that explanation. Say powerful. What was my friend's mindset, right? How powerful is that? That part of you doesn't even want you to get better. Universally experience, something that we all have. And it's something that tries to keep you from realizing your potential, something holding you back. So this is just a weird part of our mind that, especially if we are dealing with kind of like a depression or anxiety type thing, that part of our mind is like really strong. A lot of resistance there. Then you have discipline. Discipline is how do you overcome resistance? Again, if we're starting from a place where part of you doesn't even want to get better, that can be a little overwhelming. But discipline is building up this other part of you, the part of you that will overcome resistance. And let me pause and say these are not super technical psychology terms, but I think it's a really good conceptual explanation for this pattern that we all experience. So the place I start is saying what this journey is going to be for you, this mental health empowerment, self-psychology journey, is overcoming resistance, going to war on resistance. And what that means is every time you do something that helps you overcome resistance or push back resistance a little bit, you're basically building your discipline. And James Clear, author I love, says that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person that you want to become. So you're going to war on resistance, and it's a gradual process, starting with really small changes. What's something, basically the framework is every day do something that overcomes resistance a little bit, just a little bit. And what you'll find is, because like I said, think about my friend, his case right now, he's like, I don't even want to get better. You can't just go from that to saying like, boom, I'm going to take over the world. I'm going to change my whole life. Very gradual process of going to war on resistance, building up these little wins, building up these votes for the type of person you want to become. And as you do that, you're building your discipline. Okay? So an example that I've used in my own life is like dealing with social anxiety. I don't have it super bad, but like I'm a human, I still have it. So I'd start with something little like this kind of fear challenge where I'm gonna just smile at 3 people today, kind of randomly, like strangers. And then maybe I build up to say, I'm gonna give someone a compliment today, a stranger. Then maybe I build it up to say like, I'm gonna ask a girl for a phone number, right? Because that's kind of scary, like asking a stranger. And like the really hard one is like, I'm gonna, today, like I did this a few weeks ago because I felt like I was kind of stuck. I went into Walmart and said, I'm gonna ask someone on a date. And it's gonna be super awkward for me, and I'm not gonna like doing it, but I'm still gonna do it. And I did it. I related to this girl and asked her, and she's like, shows me this wedding ring. She's like, I just got engaged, but that was so sweet of you. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that was funny. Like, I hope I made your day or something. And she was like losing it. It was so funny. It wasn't scary. It wasn't bad, right? I didn't love doing it, but once I did it, it was easy. So that's this illusion of resistance, right? That's what I mean when I say going to war on resistance. So if you want to implement this, I can only give you like a general framework, otherwise this video would be like 3 hours long. Just pick a few core things that you want to learn about. And maybe it's exercising. That's a common one that helps with depression, helps with anxiety, helps with just general health. Mindfulness practice could be looking into meditation and learning about just sort of like how do you navigate the human mind. It could be connecting with other people, getting deeper relationships. Okay, whatever it is, you kind of want to just plan out like, what are these really small daily habits I can use for in each of those? Maybe just pick one to start. Focus on doing it every day and stacking, right? That idea of like a progressive load, similar to resistance training, right? Where you lift heavier and heavier weight. Whatever habit area you're focusing on, think about lifting heavier and heavier weight, but in terms of overcoming resistance. So maybe it's mindfulness. I'm going to enroll in an online program, right, that kind of teaches you, or I'm going to get Headspace app or whatever. And I'm going to start with doing like a 5-minute meditation every day. Maybe and then you build up to 10, maybe you build up to 15. Every time you do that, right, you're beating down your resistance a little bit and you're building up your discipline. Okay, so I hope that just gives like a little bit of a framework that you can actually use to think about this. But like, I've seen it so many times with my parents, with family members, with my friend now. Like, our culture and our society, 95% of the time, our system, and again, it's not the people, I really want to emphasize that, because there are psychologists that I look up to, therapists that I look up to. The system is not that interested in getting you better. There's much more money to be made from keeping you the same or keeping you sick. So if you're dealing with these issues, it's up to you to learn how to fish. And the way that you can start to do that, particularly if you're kind of struggling with this like maybe lack of motivation, you don't even want to get better, that's resistance. And so it starts with kind of creating a battle plan. So how am I going to overcome resistance with these small daily habits? And you build up, casting those votes for the type of person you want to become. And as you do that, you take back your psychology. That's why I call it self-psychology or mental health empowerment. It's teaching you how to be better and how to take care of yourself. So I hope this video helped. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, feel free to blast me in the comments. But if not, you can check out my page or find more at studyhappiness.blog.